Okay. Chocolate raspberry tarts. This is going to be our final lab of the year. We're gonna make 24 tartlets. So we're going to be using our food processor, and the base is the same blender base we've been using throughout the year. And there are multiple parts we're going to need for the food processor. For the most part, these are all together in the cabinet. But if they're not, you need this piece, which is the base, this piece, which is going to chop everything up for us. Oops, what am I doing? I missed a piece. That piece, and then also this with the little cover thing. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces, okay? And it's really important that you have all of them and you put them together in the right order. So we'll come back to that once we're ready to use it. I have my measurements here. My egg yolk. I don't have my water yet. I'll get that because it has to be very cold. I have my vanilla extract, my flour, 3 tablespoons of sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and my 1/2 cup of unsalted butter. All right, so you can see on the recipe that we need an egg yolk only, so no whites. So what we're gonna do in this case, we want to, instead of cracking on the table, we wanna actually crack on the edge of a bowl because we want to be able to break the shell in half, not just smash it. And then you'll kind of just let that fall, the white fall out into a bowl, and then move the yolk over, and you can just put that in a second bowl. So you should have a yolk in one and an egg white in the other. Now, if that technique is just too much and too complicated and you can't do it, and that's fine, you can also just crack your egg into a bowl. And this, some people prefer this and some people think this is not any fun at all. You can use a spoon or you can use your hand and you can scoop the egg yolk out of there. Okay, so you could do it with a spoon, but you still have to kind of touch the egg, and that's okay. And then you can put that in there. So either way, or you can just use your hand and pull it out, which some people prefer that. So the first step says in a small bowl, we're gonna combine the egg yolk, which I have here. Get that out of there. The water, which I'm gonna measure, and this is just cold water from the tap, but you do want it to be very cold, as it says, 2 tablespoons. And the vanilla, oops, I pre-measured that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and mix that up with a fork until it's all nicely combined. So step 2 says, in the bowl of a food processor, pulse to combine the flour, sugar, and salt. So first we have to assemble this. And if you look really closely, you'll see that this says bowl lock, and it shows you arrows of how to turn. So what we're gonna do is place the bowl on here and then lock it into place so it's attached. That's how you start that. Then I'm gonna put the blade, and it just sits right on there. There's nothing tricky about that at all. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put in the flour. And I do cover the little hole because if I don't, it fills up with flour. And then the sugar and the salt. And then we're going to set this just like we did when we used the blender on this same base, set it on here. You want to make sure that you don't have this opening here, so turn it and let it settle so it's totally like no opening there. And last but not least, we're going to put on the lid. And if you look very closely at the lid, you may not be able to see it, but it does tell you which direction to turn it to lock. So I'm going to place this on top, and I'm going to go in the direction of the arrow to lock it on. Okay, so it's now all attached, and if I lift it, I lift the whole thing. So I'm gonna pulse this just for a few seconds, and when we used the Blender attachment, same thing. We're gonna push on and then it starts blinking and then you push pulse for this. So you just push it a few times. And then food processor, food processor. Okay, so I'll show you the whole thing again. On, pulse. Okay, so just remember that it's 3 steps: on, pulse, and then food processor. And then I'm gonna turn that off while I prepare to put the other pieces in. All right, so for the next step, we're going to add the butter, but you're not gonna put the whole clump of butter in there. You're gonna cut it up a little bit. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be smaller than a whole stick of butter. Okay. And I'm gonna take the lid off by turning and then place all the butter in here in kind of a haphazard way, not all on one side. And then same thing, I'm gonna twist the direction that the arrow shows me, okay? And now it says to pulse until the butter's the size of peas, about 10 pulses. So same thing, on, pulse, and then we're gonna do this 10 times. And you kind of wanna hold it. I mean, it shouldn't come off, but you never know. Okay, and then you'll check it, and when you get in here, you should be able to see that there's really no pieces of butter any bigger than the size of a pea. So that 10 pulses really does work. So nothing's big anymore. Like, that's the biggest thing I can find. Okay, and the next step is to add in the egg yolk mixture and continue to pulse until the dough pulls together and no longer crumbles when pinched between your fingers. So I'm gonna pour this in. And I'm gonna put this back on here and put the lid back on. Okay, and you have to twist it on. And then same thing we've been doing, on, pulse, and then this time I'll hold it down a little bit. Okay, and I can tell, and hopefully you can tell when I show you, that it's really changed texture. It's much thicker, and I can pull it together with my fingers and it sticks together. Okay, so it's like, it looks grainy, but when I touch it, it's not grainy. Okay, all right, and so we're going to turn this out onto the clean counter with just a little bit of flour. I have less than a 1/4 cup. You don't need a lot. And I'm gonna spread this on my clean counter. Make sure you clean yours. And I'm gonna turn this out. And this will fall out, that's totally fine. And don't put this in your dish tub to wash, just wash it with a sponge and run it under some hot water. And most of that came out of there, so I think I'm in pretty good shape. I don't really need to like get all of that out, but you do need to wash this. Take this off, just, wash this off with like a wet towel. Put this in the dish tub, put this not in the dish tub. Okay. And then I'm gonna pull this all together just by hand, and I'm not adding more flour because I don't wanna make it too dry. And I do wanna get all my crumbs and save them because we're gonna want to have them be part of our tart crust. And I'm kneading it. Let's see, it says transfer, pat into a ball, and then flatten it into a disc. So this is holding together nicely. And then I'm going to break this in half. I'll use a knife just so it's a little bit more accurate. Doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm actually going to start rolling this out to make the tart crusts. And we're going to be using mini sized muffin tins. And you'll get your rolling pins and start rolling this out. And it needs to be pretty thin because we have to get about 24 tart crusts out of this. And you probably want to get your metal spatula. I've got mine here. Took me a second to find it. And then just keep rolling it out till it gets a little bit bigger. And then we're gonna cut it. And at home, I don't have cookie cutters, so I'm just gonna use the lid of a jar, the lip of a jar. In class, I'll give you guys some cookie cutters, I believe. I haven't looked for them yet. And we're gonna cut as many as we can. And then we're going to re-roll the dough and roll it out again and cut some more. And while somebody is doing this job, somebody else can be placing these into the Tart pan, and your pan has 24, mine only has 12. Okay, so you're going to place each of these into the Tart pan and just push it down a little bit. And they don't have to be like totally perfect. This is a pretty forgiving recipe. And you do not need to spray the pan with anything because the pie crust or the tart crust that we just made has tons of butter in it. So you don't have to spray it at all. So I gathered all of the scraps from my first 7 that I cut out. And now I'm just re-rolling it, and it re-rolls really easily. And then I'll just cut some more. So this dough is meant to be used, multiple times. Like you should be able to re-roll it pretty easily. And just go ahead and finish filling up my 12-piece pan here, and you're gonna just keep going because you have more people than I do, and you're gonna fill up your 24-piece pan. All right, we are day 2, and we have our beautiful Tart shells. You will probably receive them just like this already on a piece of parchment paper on a cookie sheet because we have to reuse the pans all day long. So I have 12, you'll have 24. And you're going to get yourself raspberry jam, and it's a 1/4 teaspoon, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and you just put a 1/4 teaspoon-ish, not more, definitely not more, in the bottom of your shells. And you just want to put a little bit, I'm just using my 1/4 teaspoon, in the bottom of each shell. And you can have one person do this while someone else is prepping the chocolate. Ooh, there's the rest of my shells in the oven. And don't forget to preheat your oven also. I want to show you the bottom of this little tart here. They should have just a little bit of that golden brown color. That shows you that they're finished. So just a touch of the golden brown is nice. Okay, we're going to scale out 4 ounces of chocolate chips. And you want to put your bowl on the scale and then push tare. And then let's get this set where we're not looking at pounds. So we're just looking at ounces. So it's going to be a 4 in front of the decimal point. 3, 3.5, 3.6. 3.8. I'm at home, so I'm putting my hand in the bag. Don't put your hand in the bag at school. Okay, so I've got that. I need a 1/4 cup of sugar. Okay, and I have my butter and my 2 eggs ready to go. This is Dino. He's helping. He's a big helper. We're going to do step 3 in a large bowl. Whisk together eggs and sugar until we're well blended. So we're gonna get this whipped up pretty good here. And while one person is working on this, we're gonna have someone else at the stove, and the person at the stove in a small saucepan over low heat is going to stir together butter and chocolate chips. And we're gonna continue to cook and stir until the chocolate is melted and well blended into the butter. So probably a wooden spoon is your best bet on this one. And remember, with chocolate burns really fast, so you have to work very carefully. I'm gonna get both of these things in here. And you wanna make sure you're moving the chocolate around a lot and getting that butter melted. So you have lots of different jobs, and I highly encourage you to divide and conquer on Friday, because if you give 3 different people a small job, it's going to go a lot easier and get you this in the oven for you. It only bakes for 12 minutes, so it's a quick bake. You can see that my chocolate's starting to melt. My butter isn't melting very quickly, so I'm going to break it up a little bit. And just keep stirring. Okay, so I pulled this off the stove even before the chocolate was totally melted, and just kind of kept stirring it, and it will absolutely all melt. It's better to go that route. You really don't want to leave it on the stove too long, because chocolate is incredibly temperamental. So you want to make sure that you're being extra careful and melting very, very low, okay? So this is nice and smooth now. And the next step is, so I have the eggs and the sugar here, okay? And I have the chocolate and the butter in my left hand. And we're gonna maybe even have 2 people, one person stirring and one person pouring. And we are going to do step 4, which says very slowly with a steady thin stream, add the chocolate to the egg mixture in order to temper the eggs, whisk as you go. What that means is that we don't want to cook these eggs. The chocolate just came off the stove, so it is hot. So we want to move very slowly at changing the temperature of the eggs, okay? So again, look up the term temper if you want to use it. And I'm just gonna super slowly add a little tiny bit of chocolate at a time, especially in the beginning. And you could absolutely have a partner working with you doing the pouring while you do the stirring. As it gets more chocolate in the bowl, you don't have to be as careful. Towards the end, you can kind of dump it in. Alrighty. Now, our last step for this part says to pour the batter into a 2-cup liquid measure, because we don't have this giant thing at school. So I'm going to put this in here so you have an easier way of getting the filling poured into the tarts. And you might want to use a rubber scraper there. Okay, so now we're gonna pour these in, and it says to fill the shell all the way to the top. So you can see that my raspberry filling, it's kind of haphazard how I put it in there. It's like some of them, it's a dollop at the bottom, some are kind of smeared on the side. Like, it doesn't really have to be perfect, because the chocolate filling is going to cover that up. I might have gone a little crazy on that one, a little too full. It's probably okay though. So this is sort of like, it'll end up almost the texture of brownie on top of the raspberry filling. And then we'll bake these for just 12 minutes at 350. And when you pull them out, you'll probably be running right out the door with them. But if you were at home and you had time, you could decorate them with a little bit of powdered sugar and maybe some raspberry coulis, which is just cooked raspberries, strained. Sometimes I make it to go with these, and sometimes it's just a lot of work because you guys usually are just hustling out the door. And then a little, maybe even a fresh raspberry on top. Something nice you could make for like Valentine's Day or Easter or something like that. All right, so I'm gonna just use my sieve here, and I'll put just a little bit of powdered sugar on top of these guys, just for fun. You know, not something we have to do in class. I'm guessing we won't have enough time to, but something that if you wanted to make them for a special event at home, you could dust them with powdered sugar and then put them on a plate for Valentine's Day or something like. If you had a little fresh raspberry and mint leaf, all that would look really great.